We have erected huge apparatuses of armed bureaucracies who will invade our privacy, who will break down our doors, who will arrest us, who will send us to prison, sometimes for years, for possessing even small quantities of psilocybin. And I stand here invoking the hard-won right of freedom of speech to call for and demand another right to be recognized, and that is the right of adult sovereignty over consciousness.
I think science is being held back by a dogmatic belief system. This machine metaphor has dominated all of science since the 17th century.
This issue is bigger than TED. I took on this event because I'm really interested in changing the world.
This was typical skeptical stuff. What was so different about it was that the proponent side was really prepared and ready to do battle intellectually. This is a huge change in Western culture. It is a steamroller going along, and Ted had the unfortunate mistake of getting in front of it. How hard would it have been to just leave the videos up, let this program here in West Hollywood continue? The only thing that stays on the internet are cute and humorous pictures of cats and babies. I have nothing but gratitude for TED. I love them. Without them, I would not be speaking here today. They are my best friends.
Our world is filled with problems, much like the bumper sticker, which says if you're not appalled, you haven't been paying attention. The insanity of all of this caused Dr. George King to study the ancient science of yoga, and I say that deliberately to Ted, the ancient science of yoga, for up to 8 hours a day over a 10-year period. And it caused a force that we all have in the base of the spine called the Kundalini, to rise through the Sushumna channel and open the chakras, the psychic centers that we all have in our body. And it enabled him to go into the highest states of consciousness known to mankind on this earth, called samadhi. In 1954, he was contacted by an extraterrestrial source, using in part telepathy, that's been discussed in this conference. And he took in all over 600 transmissions, what we call cosmic transmissions, from these extraterrestrial intelligence. And the thing that I want to share that came through Dr. King, when terrestrial man begins to realize his true position in the cosmos, he will then begin to manifest this great energy of love. I want to answer those people, those skeptics, those atheists, those material scientists who would regard all of this as quackery and woo. The idea is worth spreading is that we're here to evolve, to advance, to emerge into more and more of this incredible universe which we all share, which we're a part of.
You can't know me without having had to read this book, because it's a creation story. It's how we all came to be. It's called The Universe is a Green Dragon by Brian Swimme. Paul is going to talk to you about the mentor, Thomas Berry, who was Brian Swimme's mentor.
We human beings have taken what Barry calls a process that has been on automatic pilot all these billions of years, and in a few seconds we've put it on manual. Human beings now have the power to take their dominion over the earth and really mess it up. We have the wrong story. We are not transcendent to the earth, we human beings. We are of the earth. We came out of the earth. We are stardust become conscious of itself, which is an extraordinary concept. The mythology of progress. And that progress is somehow measurable in economic terms. And so what we are defining as progress is really the depletion of our resources. So we're defining progress as the destruction of our home, our Mother Earth. The new story is that the earth is not something to exploit, it's something to revere, to celebrate, and to recognize the interdependence of all of us.
I didn't fuck it up. You probably didn't fuck it up. But they, whoever they are, they fucked it up. Wow, it's fucked up.
And George doesn't just visit people in prison, George goes to prison because he's arrested for campaigning against things like war and injustice.
He started blessing same-sex marriages in
Yes, he
1992.
did.
So
Over the last 35 years, I have done work in South Africa in collaboration with Archbishop Tutu, and I've come to love the term Ubuntu. It is the very core of the South African experience, Ubuntu. It means I cannot be me without you.
I became enamored of the crop circles because they could change consciousness. Thank you. My movie. Bill, this is definitely not a TED event.
I want to tell you what I'm going to talk about by referring to the very best book review I've ever had in my life, which was given back in 1982 when my first book was published, a book called Space, Time, and Medicine. Someone asked my mother after the book was out, "What do you think about Larry's new book?" And my mom, without any hesitation whatsoever, said, "Well, I can't understand a word of it. But if my boy wrote it, it's right." So I'm just going to talk to you about what's right today. I began to dream about events that would play out in the lives of patients I would see the next day. I realized immediately that if I began to talk about this publicly, this would not be the very best way to advance my career in medicine. And so how could this stuff work? Well, here's how it works, and I'm happy I'm here to reveal this to you because you can take this explanation to the bank. As Sir Arthur Eddington said, something unknown is doing we don't know what. We don't have to engineer or invent this unity stuff. It's part of our original equipment. It is our birthright.
I am very honored to follow Larry Dossey. He, at the intersection of spirit and medicine, is the living master. I'm more like the living proof. I'm going to tell you a miracle story. My skis ran across a berm of snow, from the guns, which was sticky and like glue, and my skis ran across that berm. They stopped dead. I kept going, busted out of my heel bindings, and pile-drived headfirst into the ground. I had no feeling or no movement from the neck down. I was dying. Rescue team starts to appear on scene. 6 guys I know very well, my fellow patrollers. I've always thought it was significant that these are the 6 guys that showed up because out of 150 or so patrollers associated with our hill, these were 6 very devout Christian guys. 1 was a minister, 2 were his deacons, and the 3 other guys very involved with their churches and very involved specifically with healing within their own traditions. They went to work to stabilize me for the trip down the hill, backboard, C-collar, O2, the whole 9 yards. And at this moment, the boys went off book. They put their hands on me and they prayed. And they prayed that I would be healed, that my healing would forever be a demonstration of God's love, compassion, and will for me in my life and in this world, and that I would forever be a witness to that. Now, as they were praying, all my fear left me. I had the feeling that something extraordinary, maybe even miraculous, was taking place here, that it was something much bigger than I was. Fast forward, I enter my early recovery, seeing my body come back, seeing the things that I had taken for granted in my life come back. I'd go around to the other patients in the hospital and exchange stories, and they'd tell me their stories, I'd tell them my story, and I saw when I would tell my story that it had an impact, that it made a difference, that it somehow connected them with their faith, somehow inspired them with their ability to recover. I was out in the garden the next day praying, meditating. I held my hands up to the light. I said, if it's possible for some group of guys to come to me and put their hands on me, transmit this kind of healing energy to me, why couldn't I do that for someone else? I will say that these experiences totally changed my life. I've done hundreds of these sessions now. I've seen some remarkable results. I take no credit for any of it. As I often tell my clients, spirit does the work. We just show up for the meeting. Or for our purposes here, non-local consciousness does the work. We just show up for the meeting.
I remember I was introduced to him 20 years ago as the great genius of virtual reality and computer graphics.
I asked myself the question,
perhaps an existential question is, why can't all of us digitize ourselves? Why can't this data be a sacred construct that we have charge and destiny over ourselves, or give to our families, or deposit in libraries that can represent us and tell our own stories in human digital storytelling machines of the future?
It's a different kind of paradigm shift. It's a shift from the future and the past to the present. And it's called mindfulness. And it's a key ingredient to a change in consciousness and a new paradigm, because this kind of awareness allows us to use stillness as a place to move from. And then we can be more authentic within ourselves, and it builds the capacity for us to be more present with each other.
So whatever little box we've placed reality in, it's got to get bigger. We're not going back to the garden. We're going through the masculine, through clarity, through objectivity, to a consciously chosen reunion with the feminine, with the earth. And with our sturdy masculine egos today, we can consciously realize the horror of what we're doing to our world. One of the ways we express our loss of the feminine is the compulsive and unconscious drive for materialism. And in Latin, of course, mater is mother, and we've replaced the inner connection to the mother with the outer search for objects. And I believe today we give birth to a new story as we open the rational mind to the irrational mystery of the unity of spirit and matter. Ours today is the time of the discovery of the sacred in our creatureliness, in nature, in matter, and the conscious realization of the deep feminine mystery that's alive in the world, and the coming together of the masculine and feminine, the redemption of the heart.
The most controversial of the people is our next speaker. This is a hardcore scientist.
I'm a physicist, and it's my great pleasure to tell you about the remarkable work we did at Stanford Research Institute investigating psychic abilities. We did that for the CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, NASA. The work we did at SRI involved things like finding a downed Russian airplane in North Africa with code books on it, locating a kidnapped American general in northern Italy. So we did quite a lot of useful things for the government during our 23-year program. The ability we're talking about is a natural psychic ability that we all have, in spite of what you may have heard to the contrary. People can quiet their mind and describe and experience what's happening in a distant place or in the future. The idea of non-local connections is not New Age. This is accepted in the physical community. The hottest topic in modern physics is exploring non-locality. It was described originally by the Buddhists 2,000 years ago, but modern physics has finally caught up. At the time we were doing this work, this was mainstream, written up in the New York Times, published in the premier journals in the world. Price was an extraordinary psychic. We were once called by the Berkeley Police Department, where Patricia Hearst was kidnapped, and they said, "We're so desperate, can you help us with your ESP program?" And he put his finger on Donald DeVries, who was indeed the ringleader. It's extraordinary. But they learned that only 2 weeks later. The police said, "Well, can you tell us something right now that'll help us?" And Price said, "Would you like to know where the kidnapped car is?" And they said, "You're kidding." He said, "Well, so if you drive about 50 miles north on Bayshore Free on Highway 101, the kidnapped car is a white station wagon. It's on the right, parked by a diner across from two large white gas storage cylinders in the pedestrian overpass across the freeway." And one of the detectives said, "Well, I know where that is. That's on my way to my home in Vallejo." 20 minutes later, they had found the car. Our great pleasure was then to have this Army intelligence ask us to train, to set up a psychic Army Corps. We chose 6 Army officers to work with us. And Joe said, "I see a building with stripes in front and a long portion behind and a little fountain." He drew what was there, and of course the judges had no problem matching that. With our 6 Army officers, we had 36 trials. you'd expect them to get 6 first-place matches by chance. We got 19 first-place matches, and they set up the Psychic Army Corps and ran another 15 years. At the end of our program, right after I left, I formed a little organization called Delphi Associates. We did 9 forecasts, whether silver is going to go up a little, up a lot, down a little, down a lot. All 9 forecasts were correct. We made $120,000, and we're on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, BBC Horizon, and Nova made a film about us. In the 1980s, ESP still existed. If you look at Google right now and search for remote viewing, you'll find more than 2 million pages for something that many people don't think exists. So you can find your car keys, find a parking place, you can make money in the stock market, and my opinion is that the most important thing you can do with remote viewing is discover who you are. And if you think that you may not be made entirely of meat and potatoes, then you can move your awareness into naked awareness and find a transcendent way to experience the world.
The new story is never appreciated by the old. So 'twas always thus that society moves forward because a relatively small group of people, considered outrageous, radical, kooky people by the status quo of their time, have a better idea. And we have 2 choices. The species either moves in that better adapted for survival, more sustainable direction, or the species will die. And as has been said in some very eloquent ways here today, we are moving as a species in very maladaptive ways. And so the problem in the world is not that more people hate than love. The problem with the world is that those who hate with conviction. The era of data collection is over. Thank you for this beautiful day of articulating what by now we all already know. We gather in groups now because we need to intensify the knowledge that we all by now already have. And this is the time to simply say, you go. I know you can do it. And to each and every one of us, knowing that like the abolitionists and like the suffragettes and like anybody else who has brought forth on this earth something more beautiful than was there before, for each of us to say to each other, God bless you and good luck. Thank you so much.
We're gonna come together for this one. I wanna be an unfucker. I wanna be an unfucker. Oh, yeah, really loud. One more time with all your heart now.